August 9, 1986. Knebworth Park sweltered beneath a deep blue twilight as 120,000 fans surged toward the stage, desperate to hear a voice they feared might already be fading. Backstage, a doctor repeated the same blunt sentence: "If you sing tonight, your vocal cords may never recover." Freddie Mercury simply dabbed menthol on his throat, flashed a grin, and stepped into the lights. The roar that greeted him felt like standing inside a jet engine. For a heartbeat, the crowd saw only that unmistakable silhouette: white tank top, battered jeans, half mic stand held high like a banner. Then, with a defiant rasp, he launched into one vision. The first verse crackled, every rough edge met with even louder cheers. Brian May glanced anxiously toward the wings, ready to deploy the emergency set list they'd rehearsed in case Freddie faltered. He needn't have bothered. By the second chorus, Mercury's voice found a gust of adrenaline, soaring just high enough to remind everyone who ruled this kingdom of sound. He prowled the catwalk, slapping fans' outstretched hands while the stage lights set the night sky ablaze. Few in that sea of bodies knew a single mishit note could shred his throat for good, or that tabloid reporters in the VIP tent whispered this might be Queen's last bow. But in the glare of those floodlights, none of it mattered. Freddie looked indestructible, and the audience believed him. They had no idea the evening would end in tragedy, or that the man before them would vanish the moment the amplifiers cooled. For now, all that existed was one mission, one voice, one impossible promise that the show would go on. Before a single chord thundered through Knebworth, Queen's road crew had already staged a small miracle. They arrived 2 days earlier with 56 trucks stuffed to the canvas flaps, lighting towers, catwalk rigging, generators the size of city buses. By show night, a 160-foot platform stretched across the park, flanked by twin runways that let Freddie dash straight into the audience's heartbeat. Suspended above it all was a 5-ton steel crown packed with more than 1,000 lights, so bright villagers 3 miles away lodged noise and glare complaints before soundcheck even finished. The logistics were epic, but the tension backstage felt bigger. A backup set list, shorter keys, gentler ranges, sat taped to Brian May's amp in case Freddie's throat buckled. John Deacon methodically tuned his bass, saying almost nothing. Roger Taylor double-checked every monitor mix. Yet the mood wasn't despair. Crew members remember Freddie drifting from tech to tech with a wink. "Tonight we make history, darling. Help me light the fuse." Decades later, unreleased rehearsal footage showed why he was so determined. In the final run-through, Mercury's voice dropped out midway through Hammer to Fall, and a medic murmured, "We might lose him after 3 songs." Reports from that shoot remain unverified, but they fed the legend. Freddie seemed to wager his entire future on one show. At 6:40 p.m., the stage manager called, "House to black." Floodlights dimmed, the crown blazed gold, and the opening synth of One Vision rumbled like distant thunder. Every cable, every bulb, every mile of speaker wire thrummed in a single colossal pulse. A risky gamble had begun, and the first crack in Freddie's voice would soon decide whether it paid off. But as the set barreled forward, that fragile note carried a secret only Mercury understood. 2 songs later, Destiny cleared its throat. Under the cobalt wash of spotlights, Under Pressure began with a familiar bass pulse, da-dum-dum-dum-w-n-h-dum, but Mercury's opening beta arrived a half-step ragged. The change was microscopic, yet Brian May winced. Roger Taylor's right foot hovered above the hi-hat pedal, waiting to abort if the next phrase collapsed. Freddie pressed on, but at the high A of "Why Can't We Give Love," his vocal cords betrayed him. Nothing but air, a ghost of sound swallowed by 120,000 gasps. Instinct trumped panic. Freddie whipped the mic toward the audience, eyes blazing with a dare, "Your turn." In a heartbeat, the park became a single-massed choir, belting the line he couldn't. Their thunder filled the gap, and when May's guitar break finished, Mercury re-entered 1 octave lower, surfing the roar. What might have been the night's fatal crack transformed into its first miracle. Backstage, EMTs exchanged knowing looks. Tabloid rumors, Freddie hiding devastating diagnosis, had dogged the tour for weeks. The band dismissed them, but crew whispers claimed doctors in Munich had voiced serious concerns about lesions on the singer's throat. No test results ever surfaced, and the story remains unverified. Still, that slip of silence felt like proof to many who heard it live. Refusing pity, Mercury doubled down. During Bohemian Rhapsody, he attempted the operatic climb he'd long delegated to tape. The risk was surgical blade thin, either reclaim the impossible note or shred what remained of his range. He hit it barely, straining so hard the vein along his temple bulged like a live wire. The crowd erupted, Deacon's shoulders finally unclenched, and somewhere off stage, a doctor closed his eyes in disbelief. Yet while Freddie wrestled his own body into submission, another storm was gathering just feet away, one that would explode before the final encore. 18 minutes before showtime, a bass guitar flew through Queen's Knebworth dressing room like a thrown javelin. John Deacon, usually soft-spoken, tea-sipping John, had snapped. The Fender Precision smashed into a flight case, missing Roger Taylor's drum tech by inches and detonating pin drop tension into open panic. Deacon's face was crimson. "I can't do this anymore," he hissed, voice trembling as much from exhaustion as fury. For months he'd carried a private terror. If Freddie fell tonight, Queen fell with him, and every thumping note of that low-end line felt like a countdown. Brian May tried to defuse the moment, slipping an arm over Deacon's shoulder. The bassist shrugged it off, stormed toward the monitor desk and demanded the sub-bass channels be hotter, louder, alive. When the engineer warned it might blow the PA, Deacon leaned so close their foreheads almost touched. "Then let it blow," he growled. Outside, 40-foot speaker stacks already quivered. Inside, you could taste metal in the air. Yet the second the house lights died, the same man who just threatened Sonic Armageddon strolled on stage calm as moonlight, fingers dancing across strings with surgical precision. Every chorus, he and Freddie met at center catwalk, bass thrumming, eyes glassy, an unspoken vow passing between them, hold the line. And for 90 dizzy minutes they did. Still, crew radios crackled with aftershocks. Someone muttered, "John's on a knife edge." Another whispered, "Make sure security tracks him post-show, just in case." Unknown to them, a more immediate crisis was brewing far beyond the loaders and light racks, amid the crush of bodies beneath the spotlights. Because while tempers cooled backstage, a heartbeat out in the crowd was about to stop, and change concert's safety forever. At 8:03 p.m., the first chords of Who Wants to Live Forever drifted across Knebworth like a lullaby stitched with thunder. Couples leaned into one another, lighters winked skyborne. 50 meters from the stage, 23-year-old Michael Jennings, his cheap radio contest wristband still creasing his skin, closed his eyes, mouthed every lyric and collapsed. In the instant his knees buckled, the crowd sway hit him. 3 verses passed before anyone realized he wasn't swaying back. When security finally parted the bodies, medics fought for space on the tram-lined grass. Rumors later claimed the walkways were jam-locked by fans filming on camcorders, slowing the stretcher's crawl. Eyewitnesses disagree, but the debate still burns on Queen forums. What's certain is that Jennings never regained consciousness. His heart, weakened by an undiagnosed defect, surrendered under heat, adrenaline, and the crush of 120,000 ecstatic strangers. At 9:43 p.m., while Freddie bent the night back into Bohemian Rhapsody, a paramedic recorded the time of death. No announcement rippled through the park. Music thundered on, fireworks arced skyward, and the brightest night of one man's life ended in silence. Only after the house lights rose did promoters receive the police report. Only in the small hours did the band hear that their most tender ballad had framed a final heartbeat. In the months that followed, the tragedy spurred tighter crowd flow rules across Britain, wider access lanes, mandatory on-site cardiac units, radio-linked steward grids. Michael Jennings became a footnote in safety manuals, but the human shadow lingered, a reminder that even immortality-themed anthems run on fragile clocks. Back on stage, oblivious to the loss, Freddie Mercury took one last bow, and then vanished before anyone could ask why, leaving a trail of unanswered questions in the dark wings behind him. When the closing strains of God Save the Queen rolled across Knebworth at 9:02 p.m., protocol dictated that the band wave, exit, and soak up the after-show euphoria. Instead, Freddie Mercury sank into a deep bow, held it for a heartbeat too long, and strode straight off the apron, past the dressing rooms, past the champagne, into a waiting car. Within half a minute, the brightest star in rock had disappeared into the Hertfordshire night. Crew members later recalled the shock of finding his silver and onyx bracelet on the dressing room table, the one he'd worn on stage since the late 70s. Peter Freestone, Freddie's longtime aide, hinted years later that a tense pre-show phone call from the singer's London physician had rattled him more than he let on. The doctor, so the story goes, warned of throat damage that might never heal and urged immediate rest. Freddie chose the opposite, one last immersion in applause, then total retreat. His absence fed instant folklore. Some staff swore he drove straight to Garden Lodge, windows blacked out. Others claimed he detoured to his favorite Knightsbridge club for a single drink and a silent piano chord. What nobody disputes is that Freddie skipped the traditional after-party for the first and only time in Queen history. The mysteries only deepened in the decades that followed. Although giant screen cameras captured the show, Queen Productions never issued a full official film. Lost media sleuths trade bootleg snippets online, convinced pristine multitracks lie in a vault awaiting some future anniversary. Brian May would later say that, in Freddie's final glance backstage, it felt as if a door had closed and none of us knew how to open it again. The door, of course, was history's. One man walked through, the rest of us are still trying to see what, if anything, he left behind. And so we arrive at the lingering question: how did that single night, packed with triumph and heartbreak, shape the legacy that keeps Queen's flame alive 4 decades on? Knebworth was never meant to be an ending, yet it sealed Queen's legend like a wax stamp set under lightning. One blistering evening fused every side of the band's story: audacity in million-watt lights, backstage fractures laid bare, the fragile pulse of a fan who paid the ultimate price, and a frontman who chose silence over celebration the second the last chord rang off the rafters. In 90 breath-stealing minutes, Freddie Mercury proved that charisma is equal parts courage and sacrifice, risking the voice that fed a generation just to give that generation one unforgettable memory. For Brian May and Roger Taylor, the show became a compass point. Every remix, every tribute, every stadium they've shaken since still orbits the gravity of August 9, 1986. For John Deacon, it was the moment he felt the chapter close. He would vanish from the spotlight not long after, guarding his own quiet legacy. And for the wider music world, the tragedy of Michael Jennings reshaped festival safety. Crowd lanes widened, on-site medics multiplied, so the next roar of 120,000 hearts might carry less danger. But the greatest echo is cultural. Footage of that night, grainy or pristine, keeps surging back online, sparking fresh theories, new remasters, renewed awe. Each replay reminds us that live music's true alchemy isn't perfection. It's the impossible collision of risk, triumph, and fleeting humanity. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If you knew your dream performance could cost you the gift that made it possible, would you still step into the lights? Drop your answer, and your own Queen memories, in the comments below. And if you want more untold stories behind rock's most pivotal nights, hit subscribe and ring that bell. The next legend might be waiting just beyond the encore.